I'm curious, who here has read Think and Grow Rich before? Type yes if you have, and type no if this is new to you. Let's see where we're at. Lots of yeses, couple no's. Very
Ah,
good. All right, lots of yeses. Cool.
all right. Very cool. Well, if you have not read it, you definitely want to get a copy of that book. It is something special. Here's the interesting thing. Corey and I have been reading it. We get up in the morning and we enjoy our coffee. We had this kind of a covered deck built on the back of the house overlooking the ocean. And we sit there in the morning, we have our coffee, and we usually read. And we read to each other. We pick up a book and we just start reading back and forth to each other. And we started reading Think and Grow Rich. And it's funny because uh, I'll come clean. I had not read the book since I was a teenager. I'm in my 60s. I had not read the book since I was a teenager. I read it as a teenager because dad was always like, Brian, you got to read this book. Brian, you got to read this book. And so I read it then and I never read it again. And I think the reason why is because I always heard my father talking about it. He was always relaying the message. So it's like, why do I need to read that book right now? I'm hearing about it every day. I'm hearing about it in all the seminars and all his messages. And now he's gone. And so Corey and I decided, why not pick up Think and Grow Rich again? So we did, and we started reading it. And I got to tell you, it's been a joy. Um, Not only do I hear Napoleon Hill's words, but I hear my father's words. And it's really connected me deeply to it. Dad used to say that that book, it saved his life. I mean, he really did. He read it for every day for 60 years. And people would ask him why. He'd say, because every time I read it, I get something new and it keeps my mind where it needs to be. Think about that. That's what transformed him from really a broke young man with no future into one of the most recognized and respected teachers in the personal development world. And yeah, I might be biased, but I really think he was one of the leaders in the personal development world. But here's what I really want you to hear. Dad was not different than any of us here today. He didn't have some advantage that you don't have. He was a regular guy. He was in debt. He had no degree, no skills, no connections. Gosh, he didn't even finish high school. So if you're there thinking, well, that's Bob Proctor, that can't be me. That's not the truth. It can be. The only thing that separated him from where he was to where he ended up was the decision to change his thinking.
Oh, so good, Brian. I love that. So true. Let's anchor this in the chat, folks. Type change my thinking, change my life.
Look at you, man. You got it. Well, I guess we'll just see as the day unfolds, all these
You
different little
never
signs that
know.
Tommy's going to pull out of the hat for us. I'll say this. Who knows if my father would have changed his thinking if Ray Stanford hadn't come around. But I still believe he would have. But I think Ray Stanford was the instigator. He was the gasoline on the fire. He really got things going. And he really did. He got things going. And that's why Corey, Tommy, Trace, who I'll introduce a little bit later, that's why we're here with you today. I guess in some way, we'd like to be kind of your Ray Stanford. We'd like to share that message. We'd like to be that support for you. We know that anything is possible for you. Remember, it's that 95-5. Change my thinking, change my life. That's really it. Corey, how do you relate to all of that?
Well, I hope you are hearing the 95.5. In fact, I hope you've written it down. I even suggest like taking a dry erase marker and writing it real big on your bathroom mirror, 95.5. Keep yourself in this knowing that this is 95% mindset. You've got to keep your mind right. Only 5% is strategy and mechanics. This is what we mean. I mean, Bob's life was the ultimate case study, going from 4,000 a year and drowning in debt to building a life of abundance, freedom, love, and impact. And he didn't keep it for himself. He made it his mission, his entire life to give it away, teaching anyone who was ready to listen that if he could do it, you could do it. And that's the message we got. Our breakthroughs are because we listened and we did the work. And that's the message we're carrying forward today. And if you let it in, this can be your story too, because we've seen others do it. So why not you? Why not you?
Hmm. You know, I have been asked, gosh, all of my life. What's it like having dad as a father? What was the last thing he left you? What was his final message? And I know some of you know what it is because I see, well, Giselle, I see you there. I see a lot of very familiar faces, but I see a lot of new faces. And boy, that's really nice. I think what do we have right here? We have 536 people on right now. Wow. I just want to say thank you. That's that touches me. The fact that you're here to even grab any little nugget you can. Well, I'm going to share really the final lesson that Dad left me. I started. I don't know why I have to pull this book out to show you, but when I started, My Father Knew the Secret. This is the first book that I released. And I released it on Dad's birthday, July the 5th. When was it? 2023. Um, that book, boy, it was kind of cathartic writing that book at the end, that's for sure. I started writing that book when my father was alive. And, I said to Corey, I said, I feel like there's a book in me. Dad always says there's a book in everybody. And I thought, what can I write a book on? And Corey, she almost looked at me like I had two heads, and she said to me, man, what's the one thing you get asked at the seminars all the time? What's it like having Bob Proctor as a father? And I thought, wow, okay. You know what? I can start writing a book around that. What is it like having Bob Proctor as a father? So that's how My Father Knew the Secret was born. And I started to write stories and moments that I had with my father right from as I was a child up until really the last couple of days of his life. And it was a real joy. So I shared with him that I was doing it, and he thought it was kind of fun. We had a lot of fun around it. We had a lot of conversations around it. There's many parts of that book I can even picture exactly where I was sitting around a conversation we were having that I was writing, so that I was really clear in my writing. And we had a lot of fun around it. And I thought that book was going to come out when he was alive. I never thought he was going to be gone. I thought, how much fun would that be for him to have this book and see what a difference he made in my life, but in such a way that it could touch other people's lives. And it was really something. Well, obviously he passed away, and I was maybe halfway through the book. And it took me a good 3 to 4 months before I could even pick up the writing again, because it was not an easy time. As I said, Dad and I were very, very close. I was with him when he passed. We were holding hands, literally, when he passed away, and it was. I think whew, that was like his final gift to me, to be there with him. It was a special moment. Well, everybody asks, what's the final lesson? What's the last thing your dad taught you? And man, it's a powerful lesson. It's a powerful lesson. And here's the thing, what he taught me, we all have. We all have. Problem is, most of us don't use it. Dad always said to me, we're in the hospital, and this was, I guess, maybe a week or so before he passed away, maybe a few days. Um, I would I I don't know how it worked because in the ICU, you're only supposed to be in there. I think visiting hours are like 1 hour. It's pretty tight, and it was during COVID times. Got to think about that. But any of you that know of my father, he was kind of a unique guy. He was a different dude, and I don't know what he did, but he was able to have it set that I could be in there for as long as I wanted. And he did not want me to go. Man, I got to spend 12 to 14 hours a day in that hospital room with him. We were respectful, we were quiet, and I think that's a big part of what made the difference. And we would hold hands for hours and hours and hours. Dad would fall asleep, he'd wake back up again, we'd talk, he'd fall back asleep. Sometimes he'd wake up and he'd ask me to read something to him. He was still studying. He still wanted to learn, even when he knew he was leaving. How many of us study every day like that? Wow, that's a lesson in itself. That's not even the final lesson, but there's power in that. Anyways, we're holding hands and he would look at me and he said this multiple times. He said, Brian, keep talking to me. Keep talking to me and listen for the answers. I still do today. I talk to him every day. That's what he asked. And I do that. You know, before this call, I went to a quiet place in the house. I talked to him and I listened for the answer. And he said to me, he says, that answer, what you hear is your intuition. He said, listen to it. Let it guide you. Follow your intuition. He says, it will guide you perfectly. You know, there's many times in my life where I did something that I knew I should not have done. My intuition said, don't do it. But it was one of those things, you know, those opportunities that sound too good to be true. It's like, oh, God, this guy convinced me into do. So I did it and I knew I shouldn't have. And it always came back to bite me because my intuition told me I shouldn't, but I didn't listen to it. And then there's other situations where your intuition's saying, you know what? You should do this. You should take part in this. And you didn't listen. And a year goes by and you think, oh, God, I wished I'd done that. I knew I should have done that. Is that you? Can you hear yourself in either of those? I know you can, because that was me. And I never took intuition so seriously. But here's the deal. You can imagine sitting in that hospital room with my father. He is not in good shape, but boy, oh boy, you'd never know it. He never complained. And he's holding my hand and he's looking me deep in the eyes. He's saying, Brian, keep talking to me. Keep talking to me. Ask me questions and listen for the answers. And you let that guide you. So ever since then, that's what I've done. So the last 3.5 years, I have listened to my intuition. I have followed it to a T. And I will tell you this, it has guided me absolutely perfectly. Has it been easy? I'll tell you what, it's told me to do some things that sometimes that was not easy. It put me past my terror barrier like you have no idea. Elsbeth, I can see you and thank you. Um, it, I mean, I have done things that I never thought I would have never thought I'd be here with you right now. I am here with you right now because of my intuition. That may be a little bit of Tommy, which I'll share later. But my intuition has really guided me to do this. I have stepped out through terror, through all kinds of nonsense. I have followed it perfectly. You know, here's an interesting thing that Dad said to me. He said, when we pray, we're speaking to God. And he said, intuition is God speaking to you. Intuition, you know, I go back to Nolan Martine's Stickman here. Intuition is when we're not using our conscious mind. You know, our conscious mind can accept or reject. It's our thinking mind. Intuition is when God speaks to you. That's when God speaks right into your subconscious, right into your heart of hearts. And boy, you know. So I challenge you, start to listen to your intuition. Dad knew this, man, he knew it better than anybody. Intuition, it's not loud, it doesn't shout, it whispers. Here's the deal. Most of us drown it out. But if you learn to listen, I mean, really listen, it will change your life. Now, I have a couple of quiet places here at the house that I go to. We always laugh, and I'll share it with all of you. One of them is a hot tub. And I like going to the hot tub, and I sit in there. It just feels good, the hot water, and I'm out looking over the ocean. Most of the time, I'll close my eyes, and I just go into that quiet place, and I listen to my intuition. That is what has honed my skill of listening to it, being in a quiet place. Now, here's the interesting thing. I've developed it so strongly over these last 3.5 years that my intuition now can guide me in a noisy restaurant. It can guide me right now as I'm speaking to you. It can guide me all the time. I have this amazing ability to listen to it. And every one of you can develop that with use. So let me ask you, have you ever had a moment where you just knew something before you had any logical reason to know it? You know, that gut feeling, that inner nudge, maybe that quiet whisper. Corey, I know you've had it.
Yeah, but I'm really leaning into your intuition because it is next level. You've got us moving at warp speed. So, I mean, I wish you could witness it. And if you're in our group, you do witness it a bit, but living with him and watching him just move, it is so different than what it was just 3.5 years ago. But of course, yes, I mean, that question, have you ever had a moment where you just knew something before your logical thinking mind kicks in and stops it with your paradigms? I think we've all had those moments, right? We've all had those moments where we didn't listen. And I know I've had those moments where I didn't listen to my intuition. Um, Even when I knew the answer, instead, and this is classic me, I would just logic my way out of it. I would use my history, my experiences, and when I did that, I always regretted it. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm always getting better. And as Bob would say, better is a good word. Doubting is normal. And when we get in the habit of overriding our intuition with our paradigms, those inner doubts of logic, fear, or what other people might think, that's when we stop ourselves. That's when we stay stuck. You see, Bob's gift was that he didn't override it, he leaned into it. He had an inner knowing that he had developed from studying these principles for over 60 years. I remember him telling us, when you feel the nudge, trust it. You do not need to know how it's going to work out. Just trust and follow it. Now, that's easy to say, but it's not always easy to do. You really have to have a lot of faith. You really do. But you can do it because I've done it. Trust me, I had pretty strong paradigms that I still deal with, but I'm doing it. And that's what allowed Bob to leap from one opportunity to the next, really fine tuning his intuition. He went from Canada to Chicago, from broke to abundance, from being a student of Earl Nightingale to becoming one of the most sought after teachers in the world. And honestly, that's what has allowed Brian and me to take some of the biggest leaps in our lives, too. I mean, these last 3 years have just seen a lot of warp speed in this house. It really has. And that's because of you, honey.
Thanks. You know, I'll give you a personal example. I got my phone ringing on me here just to let you know this is real. When Corey and I, when we considered rebuilding this place, it's a long story, and I'll get into it a little bit later, I'm sure. But we picked the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest. It was kind of a happy middle ground. I was living in Florida at the time. Corey was in Alaska. She didn't like the heat of Florida. I didn't like the weather of Alaska. And so we had to find our happy middle ground. Man, did we find it. Well, we bought this place and we thought we could renovate it maybe and make it all work. Well, we completely rebuilt the house. You know, logic said that would not make sense. Tear the whole thing down and rebuild. When you're this close, we're literally like 20 feet from the water. So you can imagine the regulations and all the stuff we had to go through to make it happen. It was going to cost a ridiculous amount of money. And as Corey said earlier, we didn't want to have a mortgage. And we could not see how it would possibly work. But inside, there was that quiet thing, that intuitive knowing that it was the right move. Now, I'll be honest, we wrestled with the how. We wrestled with that 5%, that 95.5. We wrestled with the 5%. We run around in circles and circles with the numbers. We were analyzing everything. I was in Florida at the time. I think Corey she was in Florida with me then. We were in the house there, and Dad was down visiting. Dad would come and rent a house for a month or so, like right down the street, and just be there to visit. As I said, we had that, that connection. He was more than a father to me. I mean, he was just something special. And I remember sitting at lunch with Dad. I said to him, "Hey, Dad, let's go out for lunch, just the two of us." And he said, "Sure." And I remember the restaurant we were in. We were on, anybody here from Florida, we were on Anna Maria Island. At the time, Corey and I lived on Longboat Key. Well, Anna Maria Island is the next island up. And we were in this little restaurant. I can't remember if it was breakfast or lunch. I think it was kind of one of those in between things. And they call that brunch, right? So we're having brunch, and I was telling him that, what I wanted to do, this big goal that Corey and I were talking about. We're talking about like leveling the house and building a new house and what it was going to cost and what was going to be required. And I remember sitting there talking to him, and he was sitting there so patiently. He was just looking at me, nodding his head. And I was giving him all kinds of ideas. I thought, maybe I can do this to earn some extra income. If I make this kind of an offer with some affiliate thing, I could maybe help bring in some. And I was just bouncing all kinds of things off of him for how I could earn more money to make this thing work. And I'll never forget, he looked at me so patiently for the longest time, and he finally just broke out and he said, Brian, he says, you're all tangled into the how. You know better than that. He said, the question really is, do you want it? Do you want it? I said, yeah, I want it. He says, do you really want it? Do you and Corey want this really badly? I said, yeah, I really do. He says, all you need to do is make the decision. You're talking about all the ways. If you're trying to figure it out, you haven't made the decision yet. And I thought, poof, I've been hearing this all my life, this stuff. I've heard him say this from the stage so many times. And it's like I said, you know what? You're right. I'm trying to figure out the 5%. He says, yeah. He said, don't worry about the how. He said, the how will show itself. You need to make the decision. And as I say that even right now, I'm looking at all of your faces. Elspeth, Joseph, Dan, Bridget, Ricky. I see Ricky here. We're going to talk to Ricky later. Luann, let me scroll through. Susan, Michelle, Tina, Grace, Leanne Hughes. My God. Okay, everybody, here's somebody that is here at probably 3 in the morning. She is from Australia. That's pretty spectacular. Anyways, what I want to say is this. What decision do you need to make to get on with your life and start doing what you really, really want? What are you snaggled up in the 5% piece? What are you snaggling over like, oh God, well, I got to do this, I got to do that. I can't do this because forget the nonsense. Forget the 5%. It's only 5%. Make the decision. That's my challenge to you today. What do you want in your life? Make the decision. It might not happen for you next week. It might not happen for you next year. It might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to happen. But here's the deal. If you don't make the decision, it'll never happen. If you make the decision and step out and do what is required, what can you do today? And then tomorrow, figure out what can you do tomorrow? Guess what? You'll get there. You will get there. Everybody, most people are waiting for that 5%. They need to be shown the way. God, if we knew the way, we'd all be doing all kinds of things. We don't need to know the way. Let the way show itself as you start taking action. The key is to decide, what do you want? Dad sat me down. He said, Brian, the first step is always the decision. Stop worrying about the how. Trust what you know inside, and the way will appear. Now, I like to say that's intuition. The way will appear. It's not about having the whole plan. It's about trusting that whisper, that little voice. Don't let those paradigms, don't let those little guys on your shoulders dictate what you can or can't do. Kick them off and start to decide, what do you want? Make the decision and allow your life to reorganize itself around you. That's when things happen. Tommy,
This
let
is
me throw it at you for a
juicy.
minute.
I love it. Thank you, Brian. I love it. Who here can relate? Have you ever had your intuition tell you to do something that didn't make any sense at the time, but later you realized it was exactly what you needed? Type intuition in the chat if you've ever experienced that. Corey?
Well, I want to just take a moment and really make this practical because I love to make things practical. How do we do it? How do we strengthen our intuition? Brian said it. He gets into a quiet place. You create space. You trust the first nudge instead of arguing with it. The first message you hear, that's always your intuition. And then that second voice, that is your paradigm. That's your paradigm kicking in. That voice saying, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? What about X, Y, and Z, all those external circumstances? And I'm going to share something that I haven't even shared with you, Brian, but a few weeks back. So Brian is constantly coming in from the hot tub or just throughout the day, he'll say, so I was talking to my dad and I'm like, why isn't he talking to me? Like, I don't understand. How do you get to talk to him all the time? He's not talking to me. And Brian said, are you asking questions? And I thought, that's it. I'm getting quiet. I'm creating space, but I'm not asking questions. So I made the switch. I started asking questions, and that's when things really started to flow. And so now he talks to me too. So there. But I have that voice, I have that paradigm. We all do. Even Bob, he had it too. But a way for me to deal with it is I have named her. I call her Missy because she's always there. Those voices are always there. There's no point in like beating myself up for having doubts. So I say to her, Missy, I hear you. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep me safe, but I'm in charge. I'm in charge right now. And I've created this visual in my mind of this bench that's just always off to the left. And I take Missy and I say, just go have a seat over there. I would like you to go sit on the bench over there. I've got this today. And Bob used to say, that your intuition is like a muscle. So I practice this every day. You've got to get good at listening. The more you listen, the stronger it gets. But you can't listen if you've just got noise all the time, right? The only way you can do this is to create space, to get quiet and ask good questions. Because if you ignore it, it will become weak. We all have it. We all have intuition. You just got to build it back up. You've got to become a better listener. You've got to, with intention, create space and ask good questions. It's just a matter of giving intuition a starring role in your life. Some of you here today have been ignoring your intuition for years. Life takes over and you just go. Maybe it's been telling you to change something in your business. Maybe you've had this thing that comes up. Maybe it's been nudging you toward healing a relationship. Maybe it's been urging you to finally step into something that you've been dreaming about. Whatever it is, that voice is still there. It's waiting for you to pause, to get quiet, and to listen to it again. There is so much power in pausing, but you have to create space for it. I want to ask you to be bold here. What's one area in your life where you feel like your intuition is nudging you right now? If you're comfortable, type it in the chat. No judgment at all, just honesty. We are co-creating a community here where we can be honest and we can work through things. This is what so many of us need. We need that support. Yet the truth is, so few of us have it.
Thanks, Corey. Brian.
Well, God, thanks, Corey. I love this lesson on intuition, and I can tell by some of your faces that it's definitely striking home. Dad told me just keep talking to me, as I said, and he wasn't asking me to hold on to the past. He wasn't asking me to live by this principle. He just wanted me to trust the voice inside, and that's what I've done. It's what guides me literally every day, and it's what I believe can guide you too. We don't need more information. We really don't. We need more trust. We need more trust that we already have that answer within us. Dad had a saying that he said all the time at the seminars. He says, you already know what you need to do. Question is, why aren't you doing it? Right? I think we all know how to do better, how to be better, how to get these things, but we're not doing it. Why is that? You need to start trusting yourself. Trust that inner knowing. Because when you do, you start making decisions from a place of alignment and your big life, man, it just starts to flow. It starts to flow in ways that logic, it could never explain. It could never explain. I've got people in my life, and sometimes some of them are family members, and they're looking at me like, "What in the world are you doing? This is not the Brian we know." Say, "No, this is the Brian that's evolving. This is the Brian that is blooming. I am living my life on my terms." I made that decision ever since when Dad passed, when he told me to keep talking, and I have listened to my intuition and I have followed it. That's the last lesson that my father left me with. Man, whew, has it made an impact? I am not afraid to tell you. And that's the secret that he carried really all the way to the end. And it's the one that can change everything for you too, if you let it. Tommy?
Yeah, yeah. I love that that was the final lesson. Of course it was. Yeah. All right, friends, let's anchor this together into the chat. Type, I trust my intuition. When you decide to trust that inner voice, you're stepping in to the very same secret that Bob Proctor lived by and gave to Brian and Corey. All right, back to you, Brian.
All right, hold on here. I was just seeing some of that chat.
Look at it go.
Wow. Holy. Okay, that's impressive, everybody. That's impressive. You know, first off, I want to say that we will have a break here at some point. I know 4 hours is a long time, and we're all going to need a little break at some point. So I'm just following Tommy's lead, and we'll take that when it's necessary.
Coming up in a
Um,
few minutes.
all right. So, I want to thank you guys all for engagingly. It's fun to watch this chat. I got to come clean. I am not reading the entire chat. That's impossible for me to be speaking and reading it at the same time. But boy, I see it's scrolling through, and it's pretty cool. And as I share the stories, I can't help think back to something that God really amazed me about my father. You know, Here's the deal. By the time he was in his later years, people from all over the world, man, they wanted to work with him one-on-one. And Dad was not big on working with people one-on-one. It required a lot of his time. So here's the truth. It wasn't cheap. Um, and I think we've got one person on here that was actually mentored by Dad personally. Catherine, I see you here. His personal mentorship, it cost $250,000. And that was for about 6 months. And that was just to chat with him on the phone for a few minutes, a few times a month. That was it. You know what? People happily paid it. I know Catherine, she's told Corey and I that she would pay it again. There you are. Just thank you, Catherine. Um, you know, it's incredible. People happily paid it because the transformation they experienced, man, it was worth every penny. I'm still friends with a lot of those clients, and Catherine is one of them. Catherine is, I don't know if you're in Germany right now, Catherine, or where you are in the world. I see you all over the place. But man, this is one spectacular person. Corey and I got to spend some time with Catherine and her sister in Africa for a whole Unstoppable Foundation and then safari and everything else. And I am here to tell you, she is a special person. But she was willing to pay my father $250,000 for some personal mentorship. Now, this is something that I really loved about what he did, and it was all about that mindset. Here's the good news. At the end of today's masterclass, we are going to invite you. I said we're going to invite you into the Proctor's Principles. Now, here's the great part. It's not going to cost you $250,000. It's not going to be anywhere close to that. And I'll even spoil it right now. It's not even going to be $10,000. As a matter of fact, I think our group the group coaching, which is the primary Proctor's Principles, it's under $5,000. We have a lot of members here on the call today. As I said earlier, feel free when you see a member say something here, feel free to connect with them. Feel free to ask them. I am not worried about any of the comments. I know that what we've got is good. And if you ever take a look at the page for what the program's all about, you'll see the testimonial reels. We've been doing this now for over a year. We know what we're doing. We know that what we're doing makes a difference. Um, I mean, so many of you have become friends, quite frankly. We just have really been able to connect with all of you. And it's all about the mindset. Here's what I want you to know. Whether you decide to invest with us or not, we are going to rock your world. We really will. We're going to do everything we can today. And our intention is that you walk away today with clarity. We hope you'll join us. But if you don't, that's okay. If you do, that's great. I can go back to that whole intuition piece. Let your intuition guide you. If your intuition says, you know what, this is something I'd like to do. Maybe my life can change if I'm involved in this all the time. Great, listen to it. If your intuition's saying this is not the time for me, that's fine. Listen to it. Listen to it and let it guide you. Tommy?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Okay, friends, go ahead and humor us and type in the chat breakthrough today just to lock that in. Because you're about to feel the kind of transformation that people used to pay Bob Proctor the big bucks for. Right, Brian?
Yeah, towards the end of the masterclass today, we're going to share with you one thing. I think probably the single biggest reason that holds most people back from radically changing their lives and businesses for the better. And it's no sales thing. There is one thing. And I can tell you, it's not what most people think. After more than, I guess, 60 years of really watching people grow, transform, sometimes stay stuck, I've seen this pattern play out again and again and again. So stick with us because when I reveal this later, I think you're going to see it in yourself. I've seen it in myself, and it's really I think it's the special sauce. And more importantly, you're going to see how to move past it for good. Before we get there, though, so we really all make sense, we have some other things that I want to share first. And what I want to do is walk you step by step through this journey here today. Tommy?
That's right, Brian. Okay. All right, here we go again, friends. Type I'll be here in the chat if you're committed to staying all the way through to the end because you don't want to miss this. All right, we're about to have a little break here, I think, but let's do a little bit of Q&A. All right, this has been an incredible hour, or more than an hour and a half already so far, but let's take a few minutes for some Q&A. We only have about 5 minutes here before our next segment. So let's do this rapid fire style. This is your chance to engage directly with Brian and Corey. So if you've got a question, drop it in the Q&A button right now if you haven't already. It can be about Bob's story or intuition or the 95-5 principle or even something personal you're facing where you'd like their perspective, okay? Nothing is off limits. Okay, I'm gonna start with a question I had already from Marcus, who asked this question on our book reading call the other day. um, he says, I have a 7-year-old daughter that I have custody of half the time, 50%. I still have a good relationship with my ex. I have a girlfriend who lives apart from me, and my ex wants me back. I am insecure about what I want. How can I be secure about what I want? I like both my ex and my girlfriend. My daughter is a big thing for me, so it might be easier practically to be with my ex. My girlfriend has 2 kids, so it will be more difficult. How do I choose the right choice when I don't know what to do?
Well, Marcus, there's a question I don't think we've received a question like that one before. Um, I'm going to come clean. I'm not a relationship expert. I'm not a relationship counselor. So I'm not going to give you a clean answer on this other than this. Listen to your intuition. We've talked about intuition today. Your intuition knows, Marcus. Your intuition knows which way you should be going. Listen to it. Um, I know we want to be quick through the Q&As, Tommy, but I think back to, I'll talk about it later. My relationships. I've had many relationships in my life, and a lot of them weren't that great. And it's quite frankly because I never listened to my intuition. There's sometimes I knew, man, I shouldn't be here, but I was there. I stayed, and I knew I shouldn't have. And man, if I had listened to my intuition, I would have asked Corey out a long time before I did. But I didn't. I put it off. I put it off. I put it off. Um, so listen to your intuition. Truly. Go to a quiet place, Marcus. Sit back and think, what do I want for my life? What's best for me? What's best for my daughter? Um, and not that you give up for your daughter. What's best, the best way you can show up? What's going to show your daughter your strength? What's going to show your daughter that you're living your life for you? And what is the best way for you to be? Listen to that inner voice and start to follow it. That would be my answer.
I'm just going to add to this, Marcus. Get very clear on what you want because you need to make this move based on your desires. We're going to do an exercise. I think, Tommy, are we doing the exercise later, the starburst exercise?
Yeah.
Marcus, you want to pay attention to that because this will really help you bring clarity to what you want. When I went through my divorce, which was really hard, I don't wish that on anyone. and I was beat down. And this was before I really got into this material. I kept repeating to myself. I was setting the stage without even knowing what I was doing. I just want a man to have a cup of coffee with in the morning and a glass of wine with at night. That's all I kept saying. That was all I wanted. And let me tell you, I got it. I got it in the form of this great guy who would come over for coffee in the morning or bring me a coffee when I was working. And he'd come back later and we'd have a glass of wine together. And in between that cup of coffee and that glass of wine was pure chaos, absolute 100% pure chaos. And I remember thinking, what? I should have added more detail. Like I got the coffee and the wine, but I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear on what I wanted. So I really had to be clear on what I wanted. And so when that ended, which it needed to end, I mean, it was just so much chaos in between. Um, and I was alone for many, many years. I really spent time thinking about what I wanted. And with this exercise we're going to talk about later, it's super powerful. The thing at the top of my exercise, my starburst exercise, which is an attraction exercise, was kindness. I wanted kindness. And I'm pretty sure I have landed with the kindest man on earth. Pretty sure.
Thanks.
And I still get coffee in the morning. And sometimes we have a glass of wine at night. So, clarity. You really need to sit quietly and get clear on what you want.
Yep. Thanks, Corey. Okay, next question here from Helene. I can imagine having Bob Proctor as a father was not always easy, since a child does not understand everything about how the world works. How was that for you, Brian?
You know what, Helene? It was easy. Now, I'll give you this. When I was a teenager, and everybody here knows when you're a teenager, you can do some stupid things. Uh, Man, could dad see through me? He knew if I was onto something or not. If I was sneaking around or doing something, he just had this inner knowing. We talk about intuition. Man, he had it dialed up. I could not get away with anything. But that being said, to me, he was dad. And he was a great father. I know not everybody gets that, but I did. I was very, very lucky. And yeah, so it was easy. It was easy. As I said, we had a very special relationship. But man, I've got great memories right from as far as I can remember when I was a tiny, tiny little guy, right up until obviously, as I shared earlier, the day he passed away. He was a great father.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Okay, next one here from Agnesia. I love that name. She asks, once I make the decision, do I just keep on doing my daily life or do I have to change what I do daily too?
Agnesia, that's a great question. Yes, you will need to change a little bit of your daily life. Now, you're not going to have to drastically change it because drastic changes, man, we're going to fight that. But here's the deal. You make a decision for something big, something you really want. It should be big enough, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it should be big enough that it's going to cause you to do things in a day that you would not normally do. That's the secret. When you're inspired to do things you wouldn't normally do, that's when you're onto something. You know, I mean, this whole podcast or whatever we call this thing here, masterclass, webinar, masterclass. This is part of doing different things. These are things I would have never done before. I'm doing all kinds of things. I'm writing another book now. I might even share a piece of it with you later. That I'm doing now. These are things I would have never done, but I've got big goals, big dreams. And what I'm doing is I will do things differently in a day that I would not normally do. I'm not changing my entire day for sure. Corey will be the first to tell you, I've got certain habits, things that I just always do. But I will do things in a day I would not normally do. That's when you're on to something good.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, nothing changes until something changes. But it was like I talked about earlier, these can be 1 degree changes. And before you know it, you're going in a new direction. But something does have to change because this is your comfort zone. And we all live in this comfort zone, right? But your learning zone, where change happens, it's outside that comfort zone. So don't be afraid of the discomfort. You got to lean into it for something to really be different in your life, to have true transformation.
Yeah. Thank you both. Okay, one more here from Gregory. How do I discern if it is a faith action or a foolish action as it pertains to taking inspired action?
Well, you know, those kind of things you never know until after you've taken the action. That's the honest answer. But here's the deal: if you're analyzing it ahead of time, I go back to this whole intuition piece. Intuition, if you tune into it and truly listen to it, it will never have you do something foolish. Now, I say that you may look foolish. I think I go back to when I released My Father Knew the Secret, I started getting asked to be on podcasts. And I promise you, the first few podcasts, it's a good question. Or a good statement. I might have looked foolish. I was not that great. But man, oh man, I just kept stepping into it, kept stepping into it, kept stepping into it. And I got better and better and better. Use your intuition. And if you use it, it will guide you perfectly. You may look foolish, you may feel a little foolish, but you'll still know you're doing the right thing. As long as you know that, man, that's only a temporary situation. You will get through it. Do you know, here's a big thing for everybody. Don't give a crap what anybody else thinks of you. Don't. Stop that. Stop worrying about what other people think. I used to worry about what other people think all the time. And man, it made me miserable because I'm always trying to please everybody. I don't worry about it anymore. I'm going to do what I'm doing because I know I'm doing it from a good place. You want to do the same thing. And if we're doing things that other people don't agree with, or they think, who are you to do that? Don't worry about it. That's their stuff. That's their paradigms. That's their deal. Don't take on other people's paradigms. Don't do it.
I
Yeah,
remember your father saying, when you feel judged by someone else, they're just showing you their limits. So you got to let that go. This is your life. This is your life. You want to be the star.
absolutely. Okay, so thank you, Brian and Corey, for those amazing answers, and thank you all for some thoughtful and vulnerable questions. We'll keep the Q&A going. This is what makes these sessions powerful, your engagement and your curiosity and your willingness to show up, and I love it. And just so you know, if you like this so far, this is just kind of what it's like each week inside Proctor's Principles. 90 minutes of gold with these two every Tuesday, twice on Tuesdays. So it's 3 hours actually every Tuesday. Now that we've laid the foundation with mindset, intuition, and Bob's story, coming up next, we're going to zoom out and look at look at the principles as a whole, kind of how thoughts, feelings, and actions create your results. But first, let's take a quick 10-minute break. We will be right back.